The country is in civil disrepair, and there's a bunch of forces trying to get to Washington, D.C. to take out the president? I'm Adam, this is Does It Hold Up, and here's my review for Alex Garland's new film from A24, Civil War. This story follows a group of journalists, one photojournalist, one interviewer, and two others who want to tag along, as they embark from New York City, or somewhere in New York, down to Washington, D.C. to try to get what they believe will be the last interview ever with the current president of the United States, who's in their third term. Interesting. As they journey from New York down to Washington, D.C., a bunch of, weird stuff happens. They come across a bunch of outlandish military personnel of different kinds, because the country's been divided. We have the Florida Alliance, which is a lot of the southern states. We have the Loyalist states, which is everything from Maine all the way through to Nevada, just going through the middle of the country. The Western forces are the northern half of the country, and California and Texas somehow work together to form the Second Republic. It's a weird map, it's a weird outline, and overall, it's a very weird movie. I don't mind the story of them following these journalists as they venture to interview the president. The problem is, I just don't know what the story is that the movie's trying to tell. What is the story that the photojournalists are trying to tell? What am I supposed to take away from this? Yes, it's a very interesting concept that the whole country could fall into a civil war pretty easily. This doesn't take place that far in the future, if really in the future at all. But when I don't know who the forces are, who are the Western forces? What do they stand for? Who are the loyalist states? What do they stand for? How did this president get a third term? What exactly are we fighting for? And what is the story that these journalists are attempting to tell by going to interview the president? Are they pro, con? Maybe that's not the point. But if you don't give me all that information of how the Civil War started and how we got to where we're at, this is basically a movie that just boils down to, well, war is bad. And I would hope most people kind of already know that and don't need an entire 147-minute runtime to tell us that. But here we are. To me, this is a movie that feels like the second part of a trilogy that they just didn't know how to exactly tell. Imagine if you were watching Civil War as the second part. The first one is all about the divide of the country, how the Civil War started. The second one is the movie that we get. And the third one is maybe about how the country comes together again, how it mends after the events of this movie. Makes much better trilogy than it does a standalone movie. Now, the actors in this movie I actually thought did a really good job, even though this might be Alex Garland's worst script to date. Kirsten Dunst is really good as Lee Miller, who shares the name with a famous photojournalist as well, but she's not that Lee Miller, she's her own Lee Miller. She's okay in this role. I normally like her as an actress. She usually does really good work, but I just didn't feel anything from her. And maybe that was the entire point, because this character is very apathetic. They don't really care about what's happening. Their entire job is to just take pictures. Until it's not. And that's where it just loses me a little bit. If there's no growth or character emotion throughout the entire movie, then why is this the person I'm following? I can't connect with them in any particular way. Then we have, what is his name? It is Wagner Moura as Joe, who's the interviewer along with Lee Miller photojournalism. He's a little over the top, but he at least shows emotion and has some kind of character development throughout the entire story. He is a fantastic actor. He does really well in this movie, but again, the character just seems to be written kind of short-sighted for something as large as this movie. Kaylee Spenny plays Jessie, who is a young up-and-coming photojournalist who lies her way or finagles her way into their journey to see the president so that she can learn from the great Lee Miller. And this character doesn't really serve too much of a purpose in this movie. I feel like the events of everything play out almost the same exact way, even if this character didn't exist. Kaylee does a wonderful job. There's a lot of times that you're actually more invested in that character than you are in Kirsten Dunst's character, which I think is purposeful when you get to the end of the movie. But overall, those are 3 main characters, and none of them are likable, none of them are really that interesting, and so it's hard to connect with anything that they're doing in the movie and want to follow their story. This movie is tense, though. There are a lot of scenes in this movie that you're just like on the edge of your seat because you're not 100% sure what's going to happen. As they come across different forces throughout their journey, we're not sure whose side they're on, who's the good guys, who's the bad guys. We don't know what could happen to them at any single moment, and that's never better stated than the scene that we see in the trailer with Jesse Plemons' character. That is by far and away the best scene in the entire movie, and it will really get your heart pumping very fast on, oh my god, what is going to happen? Because this movie sets up that anything can happen, but not that it will happen. This is a very low stakes movie because it's just a photojournalist that has no real impact on the events going on outside of their own little world. So for me, that kind of just loses some credibility in the movie. I don't know. I liked this movie. I didn't really like this movie. I'm somewhere in the middle. I think the ideas of this movie are fantastic. I think Garland sat down and said, I have a really great idea for a movie, but maybe halfway through writing it went, this isn't really going to work, but because I'm so far into it, I might as well just finish it. And the trailers definitely lie. They tell you that you're going to get this cool Civil War movie and you're going to get interaction with a bunch of different forces and this backstory and all this. That's not at all what you get. So if you go into the movie thinking you're going to get a cool Civil War movie, just know that instead you're going to get a cool photojournalism or the story of journalists movie. I just wish the movie would have went a little farther into the backstory, into why an existential crisis is happening in one of the characters. Why should we care about what we're seeing other than the fact that, like I said earlier, war is bad? So overall, it's a very pretty movie. The cinematography is gorgeous. It's one of the best shot movies I've seen this year. The sound design is absolutely spectacular. There are plenty of times that they let the sound speak for the movie, the atmosphere speak for the movie before they let any of the actors or characters speak for the movie, which I think plays really well. You can see that Alex Garland has really grown as a filmmaker since he first showed up on everyone's doorstep with movies like Ex Machina and Annihilation. His filmmaking's gotten a lot better, but it feels like maybe his screenwriting is starting to suffer because of it. I don't know. I liked Civil War, but I wanted to love Civil War. And because I didn't love it, I think maybe this is a movie you can skip. You don't have to rush out to the theaters to see it. If you do want to see it on the big screen, I wouldn't blame you. It's a very visceral movie, and being encapsulated in it because of the big screen, the surround sound, the Dolby sound, all of that kind of adds to this movie. If you end up watching it at home, you might not get the same experience. So, I don't know. I'd say you could skip it in theaters, but at the same time, if you really want to see this movie, it's definitely worth checking out in theaters. So this is a big toss-up for me. I'm not sure where I land quite yet, having just seen the movie last night. But yeah, that's it. Maybe that's the whole point of this movie. Maybe you're not supposed to walk away feeling one way or another about it. Maybe you're just supposed to be stuck in the middle, because that's kind of where our characters are. They're not on the side of the good or the side of the bad. They're just there for the story. Let me know in the comments below if you've seen Civil War and what you thought about it. Are you going to check it out in theaters, or will you wait till it hits streaming in a few months? As always, I'll be back on Tuesday with a box office roundup. How well did Civil War do over the weekend? Until then, be good to yourself, be kind to others, and as always, keep watching movies.